Did Sharita have a chance to say goodbye that night?
Yes. Those were the last words I heard from my daughter. I'll be fine.
The guy she was seeing lived over the 36th Street Bridge. She would say, "I'm so scared to walk across that bridge."
The mother of the missing child had found somebody underneath this bridge.
I could see the body at the top of the hill appeared to be that of a teenage girl.
It was the kind of scream that brings you to your knees. Everyone fell apart.
Every Monday, I called the prosecutor's office. We're looking for answers.
The case was quite frustrating. Every lead we ever looked into, we were hitting dead ends.
In Pennsauken, New Jersey, 16-year-old Sherita Williams had one simple goal that evening: get her nails done for the weekend ahead. What happened next would shatter a family and launch one of New Jersey's most haunting cold cases. But here's what makes this story truly chilling. The person who destroyed Sherita's life was hiding in plain sight the entire time. Sherita Williams wasn't just another teenager. Her friends called her Sunshine, and if you knew her, you'd understand why. Born on October 1st, 1987, she possessed that magnetic quality that drew people in. When she walked into a room, conversations stopped. When she laughed, others couldn't help but smile. Her family, parents Harry and Wilma, older sister Sabrina and younger brother John, revolved around her radiant energy. At Pennsauken High School, Sherita was the student every teacher remembered. Straight A's came naturally, but she worked for them anyway. While other juniors worried about weekend parties, Sherita was mapping out her future as a social worker. She wanted to help people, to be someone's sunshine on their darkest day. November 28, 2003 started like any other Friday. Sherita had been babysitting to save money for college, and with her freshly earned cash, she planned to treat herself to some pampering. The plan was simple: meet her friend at Hollywood Nails, get their nails and eyebrows done, and be home by dinner. But here's where the first thread began to unravel. Sherita's friend missed her bus stop, a simple mistake that would have devastating consequences. At 6:05 p.m., surveillance cameras captured Sherita alone at the nail salon, getting her eyebrows done. She was supposed to be with a friend. She was supposed to be safe. By 6:30 p.m., Sherita had finished her appointment and left the salon. She was just a few blocks from home in a neighborhood she'd walked through countless times, but something, or someone, was waiting for her out there in the early November darkness. What came next would prove that sometimes the most ordinary Friday night can become your last. When Sherita didn't come home that Friday night, her parents weren't immediately alarmed. 16-year-old girls have sleepovers, they lose track of time, they forget to call. Wilma and Harry Williams went to bed assuming their daughter was safe at her friend's house down the street. But Saturday morning brought a crushing realization. Sherita hadn't contacted them. She wasn't at her friend's house. She hadn't come home at all. Here's what investigators would later piece together about Sherita's final hours. After leaving the nail salon, she walked to her boyfriend's house near 36th Street. His mother answered the door with her usual cold reception. She'd never liked Sherita. She told the girl her son was sleeping and closed the door without inviting her in. Frustrated and hurt, Sherita walked to a nearby payphone. She called her boyfriend repeatedly, 15 times that night, upset about his mother's treatment. These would be among the last calls she ever made. But what happened after those phone calls? How did a bright, careful teenager end up disappearing into the night? Wilma Williams felt it in her bones, that terrible mother's intuition that something was wrong. When she called around to Sherita's friends and learned her daughter had been alone at the nail salon, seen near 36th Street, fear gripped her heart. There was something about that bridge. The 36th Street Bridge spanning the border between Camden and Pennsauken. Sherita's friend had mentioned that the girl was afraid to cross it alone.
The guy she was seeing lived over the 36th Street Bridge. She would say, "I'm so scared to walk across that bridge."
Why would she be near there? At 10:30 a.m. on Saturday, Wilma and Harry drove to the bridge, searching for any sign of their daughter. They found nothing, but Wilma's instincts wouldn't let her leave. At 2:30 p.m. she returned alone. This time, she saw something that would haunt her forever. "When I looked toward the column, I saw somebody, but it didn't look like Sharita," Wilma later told investigators. Her heart racing, she called police immediately. When officers arrived at 3:00 p.m., they confirmed Wilma's worst fears. Under the 36th Street Bridge, less than 2 miles from home, they found Sharita's body. The crime scene told a brutal story. The teenager was lying face up, her clothing disheveled, her hands bound behind her back. Around her neck was a do-rag. In her mouth, plastic shopping bags had been stuffed to silence her screams, but it was the evidence scattered around her body that would eventually lead police to her killer. A single penny, a receipt from Model's sporting goods store timestamped at 4:28 p.m. on November 28th, and DNA evidence that would remain useless for years. Less than 24 hours after saying goodbye to her daughter, Wilma Williams had found Sharita's body. The girl who lit up every room she entered would never come home again. For 5 agonizing years, Sherita Williams' murder case grew cold. Detectives had interviewed dozens of people, collected DNA samples from every male in Sharita's orbit, and exhausted every lead. The boyfriend passed a polygraph. The DNA from the crime scene matched no one in their database. The model's receipt led nowhere. Security cameras weren't working that day. Harry Williams refused to let his daughter become another forgotten statistic. He showed up at the police station regularly, demanding updates, keeping pressure on investigators. The family organized annual memorial marches at the 36th Street Bridge, keeping Sharita's story alive in the media. But sometimes justice requires patience and technology. In 2007, nearly 4 years after Sharita's murder, the national DNA database, CODIS, finally returned a match. The DNA found on Sharita's clothing belonged to a 23-year-old man named Warren Dixon. Here's what made this breakthrough so shocking. Dixon's name had never come up during the investigation. He wasn't Sharita's boyfriend, her friend, or someone her family knew. He was a virtual stranger who had somehow crossed paths with their daughter on that terrible November night. When detectives located Dixon, they discovered he'd been hiding in plain sight. He had briefly attended Pennsauken High School in 2003, the same school as Sharita. He'd transferred there from Camden High and shared a class with one of her friends. But here's the chilling part. Shortly after Sharita's murder, Dixon had abruptly dropped out of school and moved to Pennsylvania. Dixon lived just blocks from where the crime occurred. He was in the neighborhood that night, and his DNA was on the victim. When questioned, Dixon tried to explain away the evidence. He claimed he and Sharita had consensual relations, that he barely knew her, that he only learned about her death from news reports. Investigators didn't buy it. The psychological profile emerging from their investigation was disturbing. Detectives believed Dixon had encountered Sharita randomly that night, possibly after she left the payphone near her boyfriend's house. When she rejected his advances, he attacked her with shocking brutality. The do-rag found around her neck, the shopping bag stuffed in her mouth, the sexual assault. This was the work of someone who wanted to dominate and silence his victim completely. In January 2009, 5 years and 2 months after Sharita's murder, Warren Dixon was finally arrested. Hair samples from the do-rag didn't match him, but prosecutors felt they had enough evidence to proceed. During questioning, Dixon made a revealing comment to detectives. "What would happen if I had done this and it was an accident? Would I still have to go to jail?" It was as close to a confession as they would get. The motive remained a mystery. Why did this young man, barely older than his victim, choose to destroy Sherita Williams' life? Was it opportunity, obsession, pure evil? On March 11, 2011, Warren Dixon stood in a New Jersey courtroom and pleaded guilty to aggravated manslaughter and attempted aggravated sexual assault. The 25-year-old was sentenced to 20 years in prison, a sentence that would make him eligible for parole in 2026. For Harry and Wilma Williams, guilty plea brought a mixture of relief and rage. Relief that their daughter's killer would finally face justice. Rage that he would eventually walk free while Sharita would remain forever 16. He must have been a psycho, Wilma told reporters. Why he would choose Sharita, or if he was obsessed with Sharita, Whatever reasons, we don't know, but he chose her. The case had consumed nearly 8 years of their lives, 8 years of anniversaries without their daughter, 8 years of wondering if her killer would ever be caught. But the Williams family had achieved something remarkable. They had refused to let their daughter become another cold case statistic. Their relentless advocacy, their annual memorial marches, their constant pressure on law enforcement, it all contributed to keeping Sharita's case alive, until DNA technology could finally provide answers. The evidence told a story of a random, brutal encounter that destroyed 2 families. Dixon's family had to grapple with the reality that their son was capable of such violence. The Williams family had to accept that their daughter died for no reason other than being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Warren Dixon remains incarcerated at East Jersey State Prison and is eligible for parole on January 30th, 2026. Upon his release, he will be required to register as a sex offender and remain under lifetime community supervision. The case has been featured on multiple true crime programs, including investigation discoveries on The Case with Paula Zahn, ensuring that Sharita's story continues to reach new audiences. Today, Sherita Williams would be 37 years old. She might have become the social worker she dreamed of being, helping other families through their darkest moments. She might have had children of her own, passing on that radiant energy that made her so special. Instead, she remains forever 16, a reminder that evil can strike anywhere, any time, and that justice sometimes requires the patience of saints and the persistence of broken hearts. 21 years have passed since Sherita Williams was murdered under the 36th Street Bridge. 2 decades of birthdays uncelebrated, graduations unattended, and dreams unrealized. But in the midst of this tragedy, something remarkable has emerged, a legacy that transcends the horror of that November night. The Williams family has transformed their grief into purpose. They've kept Sharita's memory alive not just through annual memorial marches, but by ensuring her story serves as a catalyst for change. Their advocacy has highlighted the importance of DNA databases, the need for better lighting in public areas, and the critical role families play in keeping cold cases active. Harry Williams, Sharita's father, became a fierce advocate for victims' rights. His regular visits to the police station, his refusal to let detectives forget his daughter's case, his insistence on updates and progress, these actions created a template for how families can effectively pressure law enforcement to prioritize cold cases. The case also demonstrates the evolution of forensic science. In 2003, DNA technology was advancing rapidly, but databases were still limited. It took 4 years for Warren Dixon's DNA to enter the system through an unrelated drug conviction. Today, expanded DNA databases and improved testing methods might have solved this case in months rather than years. But perhaps the most important legacy is the reminder that victims are more than just statistics in police files. Sherita Williams wasn't just the girl found under the bridge. She was Sunshine, a daughter, sister, friend, and dreamer whose light was extinguished far too soon. The Williams family has maintained a memorial website where they continue to thank those who write messages and send prayers. They've made it clear that while they'll never forget their daughter's killer, they refuse to let his name overshadow hers. The case serves as a reminder about the randomness of violence. Sherita Williams did everything right that Friday night. She told her parents where she was going. She stayed in familiar neighborhoods. She was careful and responsible. Yet she still encountered evil in the form of Warren Dixon, a young man who chose to destroy a life simply because he could. For other families dealing with cold cases, the Williams family's story offers both hope and a roadmap. Hope that advances in technology and persistent advocacy can eventually bring justice. A roadmap showing that families must be their loved one's voice when no one else will listen. As Warren Dixon's parole date approaches in 2026, the Williams family faces a new challenge, accepting that their daughter's killer will soon walk free while she remains forever in the ground. It's a cruel reality that many victim families must endure, watching the person who destroyed their world eventually return to theirs. But Sherita Williams's legacy lives on in every cold case solved through DNA evidence, every family that refuses to give up, and every person who chooses to be someone's sunshine in a world that can be heartbreakingly dark.